Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Pete and this is a 5-minute Bags of Action review of The Batman from 2022. After Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher and Christopher Nolan, it was director Matt Reeves' turn to helm a modern standalone Batman movie. Now usually this is the part where I'd read the IMDb synopsis, but there's quite a lot of spoilers in that on this time. And as this has literally just come out in the cinema, I don't want to spoil this. I'd like you to be able to listen to what I say, take on board what works and doesn't work, but without it getting in the way of your enjoyment of the film if you haven't seen it already, because it is, say, fresh out of the can. So, who's in this? After Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney and Ensemble Films' Ben Affleck, it was now the turn of Robert Pattinson to take on the dual mantle of Bruce Wayne and the Batman. As ever with Batman casting, that was a controversial choice. Now, director Reeves is no stranger to big-budget franchise films, having directed Dawn of and War for The Planet of the Apes previously. He also did the English-language version of Let Me In, having made a name for himself by directing Cloverfield. He co-wrote this 3-hour-long movie with Peter Craig, who previously worked on The Unforgivable, Bad Boys for Life, 12 Strong, The Town, and the 2-part The Hunger Games Mockingjay films. Now, alongside Pattinson, you have a stellar cast once again. That's something you can say about all the modern Batman films, even the ones that don't work particularly well. Yes, Joel Schumacher, I'm looking at you. They always have a really strong cast. I've always looked back and said George Clooney was almost a perfect casting in the worst film. And Affleck, I think, I never had the issues other people did with Ben Affleck being cast, and I think he was brilliant. He just was in films where he didn't get to really be Batman on his own. It was all about the wider DC universe. But yes, as I say, alongside Pattinson, you've got a stellar cast once again. Zoe Kravitz, the always excellent Jeffrey Wright, a rather strangely cast Colin Farrell under tons of prosthetics, Paul Dano, John Turturro, Andy Serkis as Alfred, and a few familiar faces from British TV over the years, whether you watch EastEnders or whether you watch Spooks. Now, like many, I was unsure of Pattinson being cast in the role. He seemed to me like a perfect Dick Grayson rather than Bruce Wayne. And having seen the trailer, I thought this was going to be more of the same, like a Nolan light almost, with nothing new to say. But I realised quite early into watching the film that I was wrong. Reeves does a great job at creating the right tone for this film from the very start. I felt uneasy within minutes, and that feeling never really went away. Giving this a 15 certificate was a good thing, like taking it into a space where a lot of the superhero movies can't go. Now, it took a while for me to get used to this only being 2 years into Wayne's career in the Batsuit, but it was good not to have the full origin story yet again. From early on, this was clearly a detective thriller, and it was all the better for it. That's what I love about the Batman comics, and that's what works here. In many ways, I'd almost describe this as like Batman Year One, with a sprinkling of The Long Halloween from the comics, mixed with a film like Seven. The Dark Knight may have been the best film to feature Batman, but this film felt like the truest to the actual character. A vigilante born from tragedy, taking his first steps to becoming the world's greatest detective. Now, at a time when many franchise films are starting to feel a bit cookie-cutter, it was refreshing to see something that felt like its own beast. Everywhere you turn in this film, there are great performances. Kravitz is excellent as Selina Kyle, and her relationship with Batman is deftly handled. Dano is also great, taking it to the limits of over the top and creating a truly creepy Riddler that would feel just as at home in a Nolan film. And actually this does feel closest to the Nolan films overall if you're looking back at the Batman films in general. Now, Serkis could probably done with a little bit more to do. You feel like maybe there were scenes that didn't make it into the final cut, but at 3 hours running time that would have been hard to do. But his tough, gruff take on Alfred was a good step, I think, to differentiate this from previous films. Now, my reservations about emo Batman with Pattinson in the role were quashed quickly. And he balances Wayne being consumed by grief, making him reclusive rather than the playboy we're used to, with being a force of vengeance who will fight through anything and anyone that stands in the way of justice. At times it reminded me a bit of the Daredevil TV show, and of course there's always been linked tissue between Daredevil and Batman, between the Marvel and DC things, and with Frank Miller across it all. It's always been sort of linked in some way, and in some ways there are scenes that do really remind me of the Daredevil series, which is high praise from me. Where Batman Begins gives us an excellent ninja in waiting, this does more with a much more interesting character arc too. Batman is a detective. It's really important, and in this film that's where he gets to be. Even things I didn't expect to like the use of Something in the Way by Nirvana, which made the trailer feel like some kind of high-end perfume commercial at Christmas, worked really well in the film itself. I was pleasantly surprised. I kept going through the film going, ooh, that's better than I thought, and then within about 20 minutes I was fully immersed in this version of Gotham and really on board with this movie. Now, it isn't perfect, and there is a hint at the end of a sequel coming. Now, I found that a little bit annoying and out of step with the film overall. Although it's interesting where this might go. I mean, imagine watching a David Fincher movie and then there being a post-credit scene linking it to something else. It just felt like a Marvel step, which makes sense really, because it's what I wanted to like about this is I didn't want it to feel like just part of the wider DC universe. I wanted this to feel very much like Batman's thing, and I think by hinting at a sequel already, although I'm excited to see another movie in this world, I don't think it needed it personally. But the few things that didn't quite work, which I'd include that as one of, were so minor. And I went into this thinking, do we really need another Batman movie? Can I be bothered to go and see it? To being very glad this film has been made. Despite it being over 3 hours long, it never felt like it. I really enjoyed this film, and as someone who can take or leave the DC films overall, I was very pleased about that. For 3 hours, I was fully immersed in the world of Gotham, and that's just what I wanted. In many ways, this was the polar opposite to my reaction to Man of Steel. In that case, I loved the trailer and didn't really like the film that much. This time, the trailer actually put me off. I nearly didn't go to see this, but I'm really, really glad I did. The Batman, isn't perfect. It's similar to the Nolan films, but the most important thing for me is it's an interesting take on Bruce Wayne. It's got a really good cast of actors and characters, and most importantly, Batman is a detective. With all that considered, I can't quite give it the highest bar, but I'm going to give the Batman 4 bags of action out of 5. Have you already seen the Batman? Do you agree with my assessment of it? Feel free to comment below or get in touch with us via email, Facebook or on Twitter. We have new episodes coming out weekly alongside our full-length podcast. And don't forget to give this video a like or subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications. Bags of Action will always be free. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do that at our Ko-fi page.